All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our event tonight. And my name is Kyle Knezovich. On behalf of the EKU Aviation program, we're excited to have everybody join us this evening. And we're really excited to have two very special guests joining us. I just wanted to welcome everybody and let you know that we are hosting this event tonight in partnership with our American Association of Airport Executives student chapter, as well as our Women in Aviation International student chapter. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to two of our amazing students. First, I'm going to introduce them. The first is going to be Miss Erica Gilbert, and she is the president of our Women in Aviation chapter here at EKU. And the other is Mr. Johnny Gardenia, and he's the president of our AAAE at EKU student chapter. And I'm going to let them introduce our guests for this evening. Thanks for joining us. Johnny?
All right, thank you so much, Kyle, for that introduction. I want to first just welcome everyone to this event. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking the time out of your day. We have some really awesome guests here tonight. We have both Linda and Eric Frankl, and they're what many would consider to be the power couple of the aviation industry. And Linda, she is the director and senior practice lead at ADK Executive Search. And then Eric is the executive director at Bluegrass Airport. And we're going to dive right into our first question. Are you guys ready?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
All right. So given everything that's been going on this year with 2020 and the pandemic and coronavirus, can you just tell us about your primary roles in your current position and how you've been trying to handle that situation?
Well, I guess I'll start. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the airport director here in Lexington, Kentucky. I've been here about 11 years. This is my third different airport being airport director. So I've worked at 4 airports prior to this. And of course, this has been an enormously challenging time, as you all can imagine, for everybody in every industry, both personally and in industries. I think the airports, though, have been a little more complicated for a couple of reasons that I think you'll find interesting. We're, of course, essential workers, and you guys may have heard that term. But what happens, of course, with the airport is we can't close. We can't change our hours of operation. We operate 24/7, 365. And we've got to meet the same regulations if we have one person pass through that terminal, if we have 1,000 people pass through that terminal, or 100,000 people pass through that terminal. So this has been a very difficult time when almost all of our revenue, particularly in April, went down. Obviously, there was no air service hardly at all. We had a lot of general aviation. We had a lot of corporate aviation. We still have a lot of transplant organs that come through the airport. But in April, we didn't have a whole lot, so we lost a lot of revenue. And of course, we have to keep the place operational. We have to keep our employees and everything operating. So no question about it, this has been a huge challenge for the airport industry and the aviation industry overall, perhaps more than any other industry. But I certainly feel for every industry because I don't think anybody's enjoying this, and hopefully we're learning from it.
So I'm Linda Frankl, and I have been in the airport industry for a little over 30 years. I have a background in airport administration at 3 different airports, and I have been with ADK Consulting and Executive Search since 2011, about 9 years now. So our company is a company that provides a couple of different types of consulting services, principally recruiting for it started out just the airport aviation industry, and now it's gone a little bit beyond that, and we continue to explore opportunities to go beyond just the airport industry. But we also offer consulting services. We do a lot of organizational design and development, coaching, and things of that nature for the aviation industry. So what we've seen since COVID is a little bit different. One thing that has been good in some respects, like Eric mentioned, the activity level for business has gone down to some degree in some of the airport industry. I'll talk about that in a minute, about when the side of the airport industry that it's not gone down in. But in the areas where it has gone down, It's given us time to reflect on what we're doing well, what opportunities we may have, changing maybe our business model, looking at new ways to do things. What are some of those best practices? How we can make modifications, tweak things to improve our efficiencies. So the industry has been doing that, and our company's been doing that as well. So granted, the recruitment on a side has diminished a little bit, but we look forward to the future. We look out onto the horizon, and we think there are great opportunities out there, and we're just getting prepared for them. We're using this time to prepare. And the one business, from an aviation perspective, that seems to be doing quite well are some of the general aviation airports. And we've seen where a lot of corporate flight activity has picked up, as well as just personal charter and other business activity at general aviation airports. So we've been working with a number of them to look and fine tune their operations and their staffing.
The only thing that I would add before you go on is I guess we should have mentioned that I'm a graduate from Bowling Green State University, has an aviation program very similar to EKU. I know EKU's trying to get to that level, but
Oh my God.
it's a work in progress. And of course, Linda, she'll let you know that she's an Embry-Riddle graduate.
Riddle grad.
And she lets me know about that pretty regularly too. So, but we know what it's like to be in your all shoes. And even though it was a few years ago when we were there, we obviously remember those days, and we're happy to do stuff like this with EKU. We've had a great relationship, and we enjoy working with the students there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Alrighty, the next question that we've got. With the challenges that the pandemic has made for airports and airlines across the country, what do you see mostly in Lexington, Eric, as being the airport's biggest challenges and strengths over the last 6 months?
Well, this is just a completely different scenario. So it's really hard. I mean, I think we, like a lot of other industries, will have to look back and say, what did we do well? What did we do poorly? What can we make changes on? I'm proud of a couple of things that actually positioned us well to sustain this. One of the things our airport has been pretty good at over the last 10 years or so is reinvesting in the facility. So the point of that is when we take a big financial hit like we're taking this year, we have an 1,100 acre facility, and it's probably a $500 million investment that has to be maintained and replaced. And we're actually rehabilitating runways and taxiways and terminal buildings. It takes a lot of money to run the airport. So what I guess I'm most proud of is that we've kind of maintained those infrastructure so that when we have a downturn like we have today, we may not be able to afford to spend money on stuff like that, but we're in pretty good shape both financially to endure this for a while, and we're in pretty good shape physically with our physical infrastructure so that we can avoid having to make investment during a difficult time for us. But on top of that, and probably most importantly, really proud of our employees, just phenomenal. I mean, it is really difficult situation. Even I'm sure for you guys as students, everybody's trying to figure out how to go about their lives personally, and in our case, professionally. And we've made a lot of changes that affected our employees in terms of schedule, because we can't have employees working side by side. We can't have employees working the same shift. We have to rotate people. And so we have people working odd hours and weekends. And I just think our employees have really stepped up and have made a huge difference in our ability to come through this. And we will come through it, and it will be better in some ways when it's done. But our employees are our number one asset, and they really proved themselves out in this case.
I really love that you talk about investing when you have the means. And then I think also in the case of Lexington, where we have the lower traffic, it kind of helped there, to take the time to work on the taxiway when traffic has decreased, and so you're inconveniencing less people. As unfortunate as it is that we do have the downturn.
No, that's a great point. In fact, we actually took advantage of this time in some ways to do some improvements to the airport that are otherwise really, really difficult to do. We have a parking lot that's usually full, 365 days a year. When that emptied out, we took that opportunity to resurface that lot. We've done a number of things. We have some restaurants in the terminal that normally when we're full capacity, we need every bit of restaurant capability we have. So we took this time to do those renovations as well. And we're actually working on a midfield component, taxiway component, and it's hard enough doing it with a low amount of traffic, but it's really, really hard if we were being fully utilized. So we're taking advantage of this opportunity and trying to do some improvements. We do believe we'll see better days, and then we'll be ready for them.
All right, Linda, this next question's for you. So with the aviation industry already seeing major changes in response to COVID-19, how has the recruiting and hiring process been impacted? And how might these change the effects of the process in the future?
So a couple of things. Actually, our company is very engaged in the airport industry. So we have many of our team members stay very involved and connected to members across the country that are in the airports. And we're talking to them about what their experience and how, and to get more information, more knowledge, and just to be there as a sounding board for them. When we've had the recruiting initiatives that we've had over the last 6 months or so during this, we've seen the candidate pool be very competitive. Many more people are applying for opportunities and many more strong candidates. And there's a couple of reasons for that, because we'll engage with them and talk to them about, is something going on in your current environment that is, suggesting to you to apply for new opportunities. And that's not always the case, except for they might say, they're looking for growth. They're looking for, opportunities. And because of COVID, they may not see those opportunities present themselves in the time frame that they would like for them to. Or it's just given them more time, to be honest with you, to start looking at new things and start saying, what is my next chapter? What do I want to do? So it's kind of been refreshing in some respects that we're getting a really larger group of individuals engaged and interested in looking at new opportunities. And sometimes, in all honesty, and we'll talk about this, it's hard when you are in the airport industry and you're looking to make a change in your career to a new location, because you can't really easily in the airport industry, and I'm speaking specifically the airport industry, you can't find another job within 30 miles of where you currently work. Typically you have to move out in order to move up or to have new opportunities. So once you're established in a community and maybe you have a family and maybe you have children that are in, activities in schools, it's a little bit more challenging to relocate. So you have to give it a lot of thought. And I do encourage people to really think long and hard when you're looking at opportunities, if this is a good fit for you, both professionally and personally, because we want it to be the right move for you as you move through your career.
I have just a quick follow-up question on that. The majority of the clients that you have, what's the age group typically? Like, is it middle-aged or is it towards a younger generation?
Excellent question, and thank you for that. So when I first started back in 2011, most of our recruitment initiatives were at the executive level. And then in the last, up to 2 to 3 years ago, most of them were still in the senior level positions. More and more, we're seeing some middle tier positions. And so we haven't been very engaged in many entry level, only a couple. So that would be the younger workforce. But principally, we are doing more and more of middle management along with executive level staff members. So it runs the gamut, all generations, except for really, we haven't done many at that entry level at this time.
That's a nice segue into our next question. Linda, you talked a lot about how competitive the market is right now. And I think, anytime we see a downturn in an economy and people lose their jobs, they get laid off and furloughed, we see that with a flooded market. But as the aviation industry works to climb out of this downturn, downturn, what do both of y'all think are most important skills for EKU students or aviation students in general looking into entry-level positions? And then to take that further, how can they build skills to get into those senior and executive level positions that you talk about?
So that's a great question. I would say this about our industry, though, two things. Yeah, we're in a downturn, and a lot of industries probably are slowing down on hiring. By the same token, again, as I said earlier, airports, we don't have a choice. We have to be open, and we have to have certain positions. So we will fill positions, even entry-level positions, when we have to. So I don't think it's all bad for juniors or seniors that are looking ahead a little bit. From that perspective, because I think there's going to be opportunities. I'm sure you guys are members of AAAE. I'm sure you see the positions that come out regularly, and I think that's going to continue. And frankly, even on the pilot side, this has obviously been discouraging a little bit when we have gone to all the universities to say, we need pilots, we need pilots, we need pilots. And then just when we're starting to get them, obviously that changes. But I really believe this is going to be back, and it'll be stronger. I was at a kind of a virtual conference this week, and Boeing was there, and Airbus was there, and all the major airlines were there. And we know it's gonna take us a couple years to recover, but I just feel like we're gonna be back, and those opportunities will be there. In terms of what skills I think are important, and your professor will know this, I think regularly, we've talked about this regularly too, where certainly we would love to have aviation related skills. We would love for people that hung out at the airport, that either worked at ground handling at an airline or worked at an FBO, and just being around the airport, it was just going to be great skills. And certainly if you interned at an airport, that would be great to have. But I'll tell you the other thing that really we're focused on more and more, and that is, and you guys I'm sure have heard this, these soft skills. And when I mean that, man, there's been nothing more important right now than having employees that are flexible, that are adaptable, that are workers, that will come in and work. And yep, I need you to do something different today than you did yesterday because of the situation we're in. If you show those skills, and you don't have to work in aviation to have those skills, to build those skills, the dedication, the hard work, the flexibility and adaptability, and first of all, you honestly have those, and second of all, you're able to communicate those, that's going to be meaningful, I think, to our industry. This isn't the first time we've had a dramatic downturn. We've had a lot of things, a lot of surprises, prior to you guys a little bit, but 9/11 and those type of things that have been shocks to our system, and we've evolved, and we've evolved because we're asking people to be flexible, adaptable, and change when they have to. So those are some good skill sets I would want to encourage you to work on.
And I echo that, what Eric said, in the sense that and many really responsible and excellent employers, they're looking for individuals that have the right attitude. And it's not just, do you have the skills or exposure experience, because in all instances you may not have had the experience. But if you come in and you show initiative and drive and perseverance, those are the things that will advance you in your career. Also an unfortunate thing, but maybe not for some, is that due to COVID-19, many airports of all sizes had to or wanted to offer some type of early retirement program or voluntary separation. And so with that, in some instances, organizations shrink in size to adapt to the level of activity that they're currently experiencing. But we all believe and we all hope that sooner rather than later, that our business is going to come back. And when it comes back, airports are going to probably think differently. They're going to probably have some efficiencies from maybe downsizing or outsourcing or looking at things differently. But they're also going to need to build back some of those team members and hire. And so, to be ready for that, I'll take a line from Eric, because I've heard him say it several times. When employees, once you enter the workforce, you don't look at your next career opportunity. You look 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 jobs down the road from that. And, he mentioned soft skills, and that's going to be at the top of everybody's list. I mean, we do a lot of executive recruiting, but we do recruiting at all levels. And that's what they're looking at. They're looking at someone's principal communication skills. And, I know you spend a lot of time in school and you write a lot of papers, but those fundamentals are just so critical that you do focus on, good writing skills, good communication skills, verbal, interaction, and being engaged. And what you're doing tonight is a perfect example of your level of commitment to your industry, your level of commitment to, continuous learning and staying engaged with the industry. So I commend you for that.
And just one more thing to follow up on that, to give you some real world examples, me being one of them. I mean, my first job, I was an administrative assistant. I was basically the guy that whatever you need done, I'll do. And, I didn't really have many skills, but I did I did the best I could with whatever I was assigned to do. I've got an employee, or a former employee of mine that started out, believe it or not, as a custodian. He's now airport director in the state of Washington. And I got another employee of mine who just started out as an intern. Now he's the airport director in Columbia, South Carolina. I mean, you may know him. So, I think this part of this is, again, work ethic and being flexible and not being above any job, and just learning and being around the business. It'll happen. I mean, people that work hard, I'm a perfect example. I'm the American dream. I say, you work hard, it'll happen. You'll position yourself well.
And I kind of want to tag onto that in the sense that, so I worked most of my aviation career for the Columbus Regional Airport Authority. And we had a very robust intern program there. And it started, I was very fortunate that I was able to be part of the initiation of that when it first began. And some of my first recruits actually have gone on in their careers to do amazing things. One of them, in fact, was president and CEO of Frontier Airlines, and now is with Sabre. So you never know who you might meet in the industry, and you never know who might be your boss. So I would encourage you to be thoughtful about that and respectful to all of our partners, all of our peers, and be a team, support one another. It is about personal development and professional growth, or personal growth, but it's also about being, a member of our industry and being someone that can mentor and coach and be a great team member to others.
That was awesome. We just want to put a quick announcement before we move on to the next question. We forgot to mention at the beginning. So to anyone that's currently tuned in watching this on the live stream, if you have any questions, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end of this. Please go ahead and type those in to the chat, and we'll try and get them here at the end. All right, so this next question's for the both of you, and it perfectly matches what we were just discussing. How can students gain the skills you both were discussing, even with a limited number of opportunities? So events and conferences are getting canceled right now, unfortunately. Are there other ways you would recommend for students to get involved within the industry, and how would they go about doing that?
So that's a good question. It's a difficult time, and there's no question it's harder. And I feel for some of you guys, again, juniors and seniors that are looking towards graduation, trying to line up those skills. I'd say a couple of things. First of all, and I've said this a number of times at your all's university when I've spoken, we have a very unique thing going on in Kentucky, particularly between EKU and Lexington, but now Louisville and probably soon to be Northern Kentucky Airport, where all three of these airports are pretty engaged with EKU, and it offers those students an opportunity. We may not always have internships, but we always have shadowing. And I don't think we've ever turned down anybody who says, hey, can I just come out and hang out on a shift and, learn some skills? And to me, if I see that on a resume that you did that, it's important because what it's showing me is that you care enough that, yep, you'll sacrifice the time. You may not be paid, but you're willing to learn about the industry. I think your former student, Megan, was a good example of this. She worked for us We didn't have a position available. She worked part-time as the customer service person. Then she worked in TAC Air and worked at TAC Air for a little bit. And these are part-time gigs, but she positioned herself well. And now she's a really a decent position in Louisville International Airport. And I mean, her career's well on her way. And I just think we notice when people make those sacrifices, and we know they're not always going to be the most glamorous jobs. But that stuff's meaningful to me. And frankly, I think for both of us, because that's how we did it. We sacrificed. We hung out at the airport and pumped fuel and whatever, and it wasn't necessarily glamorous, but it basically showed some initiative.
Yeah, and I think that being engaged in the good thing is because many of these conferences that have been canceled, you can still watch them virtually, and oftentimes they will permit students to have zero registration fee, so it can allow you to get information. And it's nice to see faces, to be even on the Zoom class. It's nice to, and you can put questions in the chat, and no one minds answering any type of question that they may see, so you can engage. And but I think you can also, there's a lot of more written information coming out and available. I would encourage you to try to sign up for some of those newsletters. A lot of them are free. I can't, promote specific ones at this time, but you can do your research. You guys are much better at doing research on the internet about what type of, what's your interest, and what are those associations, organizations that are out there that are of interest, and then kind of just drill down and find out what newsletters they have so that you can become familiar with them. And then through that, as Eric said, people are all over the country, so people may be in different cities, and they may have the opportunity to go to their local airport. I know, some universities are actually not having class, and so they're virtual currently, and you may be back at your home state attending classes at EKU. I'm not sure if that's exactly occurring there at EKU, but I know it is in many other universities. And you can go to your local airport, and as Eric indicated, ask about shadowing opportunities, ask about part-time opportunities, and to just get exposure. But if you're looking also for how you can utilize this time to enhance your capabilities for consideration, you guys, this is the age where you're really technology savvy, and you can look into enhancing your skills, whether it's in Microsoft products or Tableau or Google Docs, or these are things that people that are in the industry, like Eric and myself, we've been here 30 years. I mean, we have certain skills and exposure and experience, but not to the degree in this technology arena that people like yourself do. We really value that. We could really benefit from that.
And let me just add one last thing, and I don't know if the student chapter gets this, and I assume Kyle might see this, but the other thing that might be really interesting to do is, AAAE, if you're familiar with, has conference calls probably, I think, every week. And you could listen in on those. You may not understand everything that's being talked about or what it is, but they're going on about legislative issues and funding issues and TSA and FAA and a number of things that are going on. We do this every week because there's just so much change happening so fast. And I don't know if the student chapter has access to be able to listen in, just to listen in on those, but I'd be happy to make that happen if you want to. You may not get a ton out of it, but you'd listen and hear the industry and what people are saying, and what my colleagues are saying to each other, and that sort of thing. And I think it'd be worthwhile. And I know Johnny knows this, and I know Kyle knows this too. But look, we're here to help the students, both of us, and a lot of people in our industry. I've never not returned an email to any student that's asked me a question. So, if you're out there and you're curious about the industry for your career, or you hear something with AAAE that you don't understand fully, drop me an email. I will reply back. So take advantage of that opportunity.
Eric, I thank you for extending that offer. We have been attending a few of the conferences and trying to make that available. I got to extend a thank you to Kyle for being a huge part in that. And a lot of what our chapter does, it wouldn't be as successful without Kyle's intel, and then without the connections we have at, like you said, Lexington, and what we're getting at Louisville, and hope to be CBG. I gotta say, we're very blessed, and we're thankful for the community that we've been able to build here in Kentucky. It's one of a kind for sure.
And I would just add one thing onto that, John. I haven't told you this yet, but usually when people end up leaving our employment, I always ask them to do one thing, and that the only thing I ask in return is that you pass this on. When you're in my position, you pass this on as well.
I can definitely do that for you, not a problem.
I really appreciate you all touching on how and their skills. I think very often, especially in the university setting, we can get kind of used to our insulated environments where, we're just interacting with our professors. So, like this opportunity to speak to you all. And then Eric, what you said, listening in on bigger conferences and just becoming more aware of the industry at large, outside of just what we're exposed to every day. And so our next question that we had, and you guys both kind of hit on this earlier, talking about aspects of emotional intelligence and also sacrifices that we have to make to be successful. In y'all's opinion, what makes a successful leader specific to the aviation industry and in general?
Well, she's probably more of the expert in that. I'll just tell you a little bit about what I've sort of learned, and this COVID situation, it really kind of highlights it. I mean, it's a humbling experience, really, to go through something like this and see your organization basically completely devastated, and then try to rebuild it from the ground up and rethink it. And so what I guess I've learned throughout my career is to be humble, because none of us knows everything. I think one of the things that's tough, particularly when you're younger and even in your start your career early, is nobody wants to say, I don't know. And really, that's a sign of strength. I mean, and I still say today, there's things I learn every day. I'm not too proud to say I don't know. Can you help me? And I have to do some research on that. But I'll tell you, just being humble and understanding there's different points of view. The airport industry, and I think a lot of industries are going to get this way, we have so many different stakeholders with so many varied interests, and we don't always agree, but we ought to be able to listen to one another and understand different points of view. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody in the end, but you should always be respectful of that person and understand that people come from different angles. General aviation is different from the corporate pilot, which is different from the airline pilot, which is different from our neighbors that have noise concerns, or our mayor. Everyone has an interest in the airport. It all comes together at the airport, and everyone has a different perspective. And I think being humble and acknowledging that you may not know everything and listening are some really important skills to, I think, being a good leader.
And just to tag on to exactly what Eric's saying, everybody comes from a different perspective, different experiences. And I value, and I think it's important to value, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And diversity and inclusion is really, it also includes thought. It's diversity in thought, and looking to how you can build a team that come to problem solving from different perspectives. I think that's where you get stronger. So, I would say that, leaders, are strategic thinkers. They're problem solvers. They're communicators. As Eric said, they have to have humility. They have to have, integrity. They have to have the interest in inspiring others and motivating and coaching. I guess I enjoy sports. Some people do, some people don't. But I mean, you look at coaches. The coaches are individuals that can really, get people to leverage their strengths with one another and minimize their weaknesses. And that's what I think leaders are individuals that can understand what the community interests are, understand what the regional needs are, look at, how they can be a community asset how the airport can be a community asset, how the leader can be engaged in the community. Airports are in a lot of regards, they're public servants. And so they're here to support what the community needs to thrive. And I think a leader is someone who can communicate, who can be sympathetic, empathetic, and but also be results and goals oriented, who can be organized, who understands how to put together a business plan and how to execute towards that business plan. They have to be a driver, but also make sure that they don't leave people in the dust.
And I'll just add one last thing, because Erica kind of mentioned this, and frankly, I'm just jealous that you're even familiar with this term, emotional intelligence. I clearly wasn't for most of my career, but it's one of those things you learn. But it's a really interesting concept that if you're not familiar with it, you ought to try to familiarize yourself with that, because it's really important to know yourself. I know I have weaknesses, and I can acknowledge them, and I try to minimize them, and those type of things. And again, that's part of emotional intelligence, to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and just and be okay and understand that not everybody's great at everything, and that sort of thing. And I think, again, when you're coming out of college, you've got this education, hopefully you have some experience. But as I tell folks, even our new operations folks that start at the airport, there's a lot of maintenance guys that don't have a college education, but you can learn a lot from them. If you open your mind and hear what they have to say, they've got some great experiences. Don't assume that, because you've got that degree, that you know everything. And part of that is really is emotional intelligence. And I'm just really happy that you guys even know that terminology.
We had Dr. McFadden, the EKU president, come speak to us
Oh, yeah.
recently, and a lot of what you all are saying in terms of leadership is really echoing the things that he said. And it's great that all of the skills that you guys are saying are important are transferable, even like in the academic arena, and I assume in all industries, if these specific skills that you're talking about keep coming up with different speakers that we have.
And they become more pronounced as you move up in an organization. They become more important. So, of course, when you start with an organization, we're looking for those kind of hands-on skills and knowledge that you can help us, through a regulatory environment and that sort of thing. But as you move up the chain, understanding that there's different points of view and there's so many different stakeholders, and trying to, again, understand how to navigate your way through, that's a really important skill.
Yeah, I will say that, when I first started out in my career, it was important to me to do a good job in my role, to have that foundational knowledge, to be a contributor. And I just kind of, really focused on what my responsibilities and duties were. As you grow in that position and in other positions, you start to look at how you can impact others, and how what you do might, negatively or positively influence another internal customer or an external customer. And it starts to be bigger. And you start to look at the bigger picture. And the earlier you can understand that and accept that, like the emotional intelligence, knowing that you're not what your strengths are, and that you're not you want to be part of the team. I think many of you, we are in Kentucky, and there is a basketball team here locally, the Cats, I think is, and
You might be familiar with.
And the coach, he has to build a team every year with players that don't work well with, or haven't worked with one another, and they have to come together. And that's kind of what, when you're in a work, as in the work environment, you don't necessarily know how others can contribute to your success, or how you can contribute to theirs, but it's your responsibility to figure it out, to work with them, to learn from them, to provide input to them.
Ask questions.
So yeah, ask questions. So when you're young in your career, you're focused on your own individual development. As you grow in your career, you focus on the team and the organizational development.
That was some awesome answers. So that last question was about emotional intelligence. This next one's more based on emotional endurance. So if there's one thing I've taken away from Kyle's classes, it's that the aviation industry is cyclical, and that it has its severe highs and its severe lows. And so with so many challenging times throughout the history of this industry, where do you both think your passion in aviation comes from? And then, given everything that you guys have seen in your career, how have you maintained that attitude?
Go ahead, you go first.
Oh no.
That's a deep one. I'm sorry.
Whatever he said. No, I guess I did get interested in aviation early on, and I think what has kept me interested is the people. Are the people that that are in the industry, the people that I'm around. I used to go into the office every day, and we had a workforce of about 400 people in Columbus, and they energized me. And we had great teams, and we had great team successes. And yes, there were some difficult times. 9/11 was definitely one of them, and I remember that day. And I remember we were in a team meeting. It was an operations. I was in operations at the time. It was an operations team meeting. There's about 30 of us here, and boy, all we had to say, okay, this is go time. We've got work to do, and we all pulled together, and that was pretty significant in my career. But we've done that a number of times, and it is a little cyclical. But it's just the people that I've been around, and I've been fortunate. Oftentimes, I've been around people that are in entry level. Like I said, I was in operations, so when you're getting started in the airport industry, oftentimes you might not be an admin assistant. You might start off in airport operations. And a lot of times, those are the people that are really interested in the career and advancing their career. They're excited to learn new things. They want to offer new ideas, and I enjoyed that part of it. So that's kind of what kept me going. And now in recruiting, it's talking to individuals that want to elevate their exposure and experiences, and get engaged in the industry in other areas. So I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to just have a good group of individuals to work with and to talk to about the industry and keep me motivated.
So I just, first of all, agree with that part about, it's about the people to a great degree. It is a unique environment, and it is very, very small industry. We have, 450 airports that have some level of commercial service, but really maybe 150 that have any regular commercial airline service. There's 3,000 airports overall. It's just a very small pool of people relative to the population and to the world population for sure. So you will cross paths with some of the same. I've been to 4 different airports. I know my colleagues. I know which airports they've been at. I mean, you just get to know each other pretty well. But I tell you, the other thing that's sort of been good for me is, it's been a challenging industry, which has its pros and its cons. I mean, today it's challenging and it's painful, but it's also change, and I thrive on change, and not everybody does, and I acknowledge that. So it's another thing that you kind of got to know about yourself. If you want some stability and you're kind of more comfortable with that stability, aviation probably isn't for you. But I like a challenge, and I like the constant change. And in our case, and this is probably, it may just be more of a critique than anything, but I think Kyle knows this too. This is probably sickness. I'm just not satisfied. I want that thing to run perfectly. I don't want it to run well. I don't want it to run really well. I want that airport to run perfectly, and it's going to annoy me if it's not. So part of this is just driven, and because it's such a complex industry, I'm not bored. I've never been bored. I've been in this industry now a long time, but I've not been bored. And that's one of the fun things about the industry. But frankly, it is a fun industry. I think the last thing that I would say is, look, every time we have these ups and downs around the world, aviation is almost always highlighted. In this case, obviously with COVID, you hear a lot about the nurses and doctors and hospitals, but aviation, whether there's an economic downturn or a terrorist event or obviously a virus, aviation, we talked about shutting down the world aviation system and all the interconnectivity to that ecosystem is an unbelievable effort. And to start it back up is an unbelievable effort. So it's just kind of a really interesting industry from that perspective. And I think like anything, if you want to, you'll never be bored in this business.
Thank you guys both for sharing your thoughts. And that, I think, like you all, being in aviation is so interesting because of the passion that everyone shares for it. You know, from the GA guys at the airport that are flying RVs to, you know, the big 747 pilots and airport executives to the people volunteering for the Experimental Aircraft Association. You know, everyone, they have that love and passion, and it's just a matter of how it manifests itself in their career or their volunteering. We're going to move on to a couple of questions that have been shot out from some of our viewers. It looks like there's quite a few about networking. Let's see, some tips to help build connections, how to maintain professional relationships. Can you all speak on that a little bit, please?
So the first thing that comes to my mind specific to EKU is, man, we have so many graduates now from EKU that are out in the system. And I know Kyle tries to connect you all, you know, particularly when we have career day and that sort of thing. But I just think reaching out, you already have something in common. You know, you're a colonel, and that is an awesome thing. And people will remember that. I'm a Falcon. I know there's a guy in Greenville, Spartanburg, that's a Bowling Green graduate. There's a guy at United, a route planner at United Airlines that's a Bowling Green graduate. I mean, that use those connections. I mean, try to stay in touch with them. I mean, look, I'm sure that some people may not respond to you, but most people are good enough to respond to you. And I just think that's a good network in and of itself. But then again, as we talked about the three airports, the three commercial service airports, and you make a good point about the general aviation ones too. I wouldn't shy away from those either. But there's going to be opportunities to meet people, and you come out to the airport and you shadow somebody, you're going to meet, again, in our case, we've got Purdue graduates, we've got your Embry-Riddle graduates, a couple of them that squeak through the system. We don't have that Bowling Green graduate yet, besides myself, but we're working on it. But my point is, it's something that is fun to engage in and see where people come from. And, my buddy, the airport director in Louisville, is also a Bowling Green graduate. So 2 people in Kentucky from Bowling Green State University. So what are the odds? My point is, though, we have a network in our state that gives you an opportunity to connect with people and I know Kyle knows this, we just feel like this is kind of a rare thing. I know Kyle sees his colleagues in the industry, and I see my colleagues, and I don't think many airports and universities have put themselves together as much as we have. And I think it's a great opportunity for the EKU students.
Yeah, I would echo that in the sense that you guys are unique in some respects, and you do have a great network by just staying in touch with those university graduates. But there are many student chapters across the country. I know Kyle stays very connected with the other student chapters of AAAE, staying involved with, if you're in a certain region, Kentucky gets to be in 2 regions. If you're from AAAE, you're both in the Great Lakes region and the Southeast region. And so really that broadens your network of airports or states in which you can engage. But, the airport industry, if it's just airports, and I know we want to talk a little bit about, beyond airports, whether it's, understanding FBOs or commercial aviation or general aviation, but the commercial service airport industry, as Eric mentioned before, is very, very small. As he indicated, there's about 150 commercial service airports that really have a level of service greater than 200,000 enplanements. So people, you'll get to know people in the industry, and like I said before, you never know when your paths may cross. You never know when you may become a boss of someone, or you want to pick up the phone and call someone and just reconnect with them to see what's going on in their world. Of course, with the internet these days and LinkedIn and other, platforms. You can stay, engaged and connected and watch where people are moving and try to pay attention to that. There might be someone that's, moved to an airport or a job that you're interested in that you want to just, reach out to. And I think it's a small enough industry. People want to stay connected.
And I tell you, I'm glad she mentioned, I forgot she mentioned that LinkedIn. We did this a week or two ago with the Ohio State University student chapter too. And, I'm not as close to them as I am to EKU, but man, I got a ton of LinkedIn invites after that. So, whoever's listening, feel free to link in and we'll all, obviously connected to us, you could connect to other people too. So.
All right, so this next question, are there things that we could be doing now in the industry downtime? This is both academically and professionally. So people who are in the workforce right now, what are things that they could be doing right now in this downtime to help build their career for their future?
So I assume we're not talking about the pilot track because those people can continue to fly and certainly do flight instruction and stuff like that, build their hours, that sort of thing. And I really, I've said this before, and I know I've said this to Kyle, and I said this to the Ohio State folks too. You will be a better, if you engage at the airport level and the airport management and just airport operations, I think that makes you a better pilot, honestly. And that's why we want our ops people to be that are working for the airport to be pilots too, or at least have ground experience. So I think it's hard at this particular point in time from an education perspective. I mean, to me, obviously you're in college, you're doing those things that you need to do, you're taking those classes. Are there additional classes you could take? Perhaps. I still think though, there are still opportunities to shadow and even again, whether it's working an FBO or a charter operator, there's just other opportunities to at least get exposed to the industry while you have this downtime. I mean, particularly, in the summer, I don't know how you guys are doing your classes now at EKU, whether you're having in person or not, or what the flexibility you have. But again, I think about UPS. I mean, some behemoth and DHL. I mean, some of those are just huge companies, and I know a lot of college student works there. And just being on the ground, working the ramp, doing something, it's going to be great for your resume.
And so if you're in the airport administration track, if that ultimate goal is to one day to be an airport, senior leader, community engagement, community involvement is valuable and meaningful. I mean, to be giving back to your community and at all levels. So if there's opportunities to, do community service, I would highly suggest that. The other thing that, I'm surprised I didn't hear Eric say, because we talk about this often, and that is, it's maybe not when you first, start your career in aviation, you have a full understanding of it because you've gotten an education in understanding the regulations and in understanding safety and security and things of that nature, maybe noise and property administration. But one of the other things that airport leaders have to understand is how to navigate sometimes very difficult and challenging political environments. And I say that because Eric and I often talk about that we probably didn't pay enough attention early on in our careers to civics and to understanding how, the laws and regulations and engagements really transpire in our political arena on a local level, of course, on a national level. But, as an airport leader, a lot of the time they are spending with their community leaders and with their legislators and helping legislators understand impacts to the aviation industry when things happen in our economy, like COVID-19. So, trying to focus on, how can you understand our political arena and environment better I know we read a lot of news and sometimes it can be overwhelming, but to have an appreciation and understanding of it, I think is helpful. And if you go for a job interview, one of the things that we'll tell individuals is to do your homework, to do your research, understand as much as you can about that culture, about the work environment. Of course, you're going to look on the internet, and you're going to look at their website, but go out and research what's happening locally in the news, what are the hot issues in the community, so you have a better appreciation or understanding of the culture, and knowing if it's a fit for you, or what might be exciting or helpful to you about the environment. So,
and I guess getting one last thing, and I'm sure Kyle would probably be a better resource than we are on this too, but I don't think it's a totally bad idea if during this time it's difficult to find a job and is to work on your master's. Normally, I prefer to have somebody that has some work experience and then attempt to get their master's. But this is all timing, and I think Kyle, you might have started your master's right after your bachelor's, right? It's not a totally bad concept to utilize this time.
Thank you all for those points. Linda, I love how you talk about the importance of civic engagement. I remember I had a friend once that was in school to become a teacher, and she very proudly told me that she didn't vote, which I found astounding, being that her checks were signed by the local government. And I think in aviation, we're in a very similar boat where there's so much money in grants or subsidies that help fuel our industry and help keep it strong, especially in hard times. So as aviators, whether management or flight side, like you said, it is just super important to at least be aware of the issues and to take it further, know where you stand, and then vote.
That's perfect that you got that in there, the vote part. That's great.
Right. We've spoken a lot about aviation activities to put on your resume. And we've got one question here. What non-aviation activities can we partake in that look especially good on a resume? I know you talked a lot about the civic engagement, but also beyond that, what looks good on a resume, non-aviation related?
Boy, you would probably be better at this than I. Let me think about that.
Okay.
I have an idea, but go ahead.
Well, I do think community service, but I also want to mention that, sometimes you might have military exposure experience that I think is valuable to incorporate and include. Anytime you have any type of supervisory exposure or experience, talking about how you've developed teams, have been part of teams, I think is meaningful. I'm trying to think of things early in your career that you want to make sure, of course, volunteering is valuable.
The thing that comes to mind for me is something I wish I had done, but it's not necessarily easy for everybody to do. I spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., so Linda was right. I probably glossed over the civics part, that I really wish students had a better understanding of the fundamentals of how a bill becomes a law and the regulatory environment and how things happen. And particularly, most of the entry-level positions in airports, at least, are regulatorily based. It's how we comply with regulations more than anything. But I kind of wish I would have spent a semester in DC. And it wasn't really for political reasons, Republican or Democrat reasons, but just understanding the fundamentals, the inner workings of how Washington works I wish I would have done it. And maybe I have more of appreciation now because of my career, where I ended up being, than I did. I'm sure I did when I was 20 years old. But I go out there and I see a lot of college kids out there. First of all, it looks like they're having fun. And second of all, no matter what career you end up in this life, in any industry, I just think that experience out in DC, or perhaps at the state level, or working for a congressman or senator, is not bad experience either. You have to be careful. And let me just say this, I've been very careful in my career to not be aligned or someone have perceived me to be a Republican or a Democrat, because of course you alienate 50% of the other people. So I've never been political in that way, but I really like the process of how a bill becomes a law and understanding the mechanics of DC and learning from that perspective.
Eric, I do like that you mentioned that you can do it on the state level. I did a short internship last year with the Kentucky House of Representatives, and it was a very informative experience, and also taught me that I made the right choice in not being a political science major.
But I mean, I'm sure that process, I mean, even in a state, you know, how a state bill becomes a law. I mean, the process legislatively and then the process politically to get anything done in our way of governing, and a lot of people don't like it, and it's frustrating, and I get frustrated with it, but it's a fascinating system for how our country's developed and why, you know, I feel like it's one of the best countries in the world. In spite of that, in spite of this pain that we go through.
It's all worth it though in the end.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. We'll do this one last question. So the question says, most college students eventually receive the opportunity to build a relationship with professional pilots, airport managers, and directors as yourselves. The question saying, with that being said, until we qualify for that kind of position, what can we do to stay in touch with so how can we stay in touch with you? How can pilots stay in touch with those that are at the majors right now, and keep them professionally healthy?
So it's harder for me to talk about the pilot side since that's what we're associated with. But again, this somewhat goes back to the EKU and those, you know, those past students that came through the program that are now pilots. I just think there's a natural connection there. But in respect to airport management, whether it's one of the 3 big airports in Kentucky, look, I think we have EKU kids at every airport, right? So, I mean, man, I just know myself and my colleague Dan Mann over in Louisville, we love doing this stuff. And again, we'll come speak. If you want to come to the airport and ask questions, I mean, we'll do that stuff. There's just some unique situation going on in Kentucky from my perspective, where you've got a lot of professionals out there that want to do it because we think it's fun. And we love EKU, and we're trying to do our part to build the program and that sort of thing. So I think, and I've told Kyle this before, it sometimes surprises me that some of the students don't take more advantage of coming out. You know, again, it's not just me, it's our operations manager, Travis Curley, one of your former graduates, Christian Nelson. I mean, Wes Lex, as you know, Johnny. I mean, there's opportunities for people to come out and hang out and get to know us and meet us. And maybe there's not a job right away, and maybe there's not an internship right away. But I tell you what, even our FAA, our annual FAA inspection, some of the stuff that we do with the honor flight that I think many of you participated in, volunteering and being out there and being associated with it. And you can do that really at all 3 airports from my perspective. It's, you know, and if you have students that live, you know, north of Lexington or closer to Louisville, I just know they're going to embrace it too. To me, part of this is up to the students. You guys have got to show the initiative, and you have to reach out to us. We're working a job, we're busy, we're doing stuff. But you guys got to reach out to us and engage us and say, hey, you know, can I spend 15 minutes with you, or, you know, stop by the airport and whatever. And most of us will accommodate you.
And I think that's true for the industry. As we said before, it's a small industry, and I think we're all really excited about, you know, sharing kind of best practices and what works well, and trying to get people engaged and involved in it at all levels. And, you know, we've talked a lot about those that are in, you know, an airport program or an aviation program, whether it's to be a pilot or, you know, their education is in aviation. But the airport provides, you know, there's jobs in all aspects of different fields at the airport, whether it's maintenance or property management or accounting or finance. So we really welcome individuals that, you know, want to get exposed to aviation. And, you know, we encourage you to, you know, send us an invite to LinkedIn, connect with us that way, stay in touch. I have various individuals, you know, that are younger in their career that, you know, text me periodically, hey, I have applied to this. It might not be anything that I'm real familiar with, or I may know someone at the airport, and I may say, oh, would, you know, I'll get some more information about that position for you. and that type of thing. So we really welcome that. And so I'd encourage you guys to get the feelers out there, get your name out there and stay engaged. Once we get back to going to conferences and meetings, try to get opportunities to attend those as well. And, if not having those, go to your local airport.
I gotta say, since freshman year, I can't thank Bluegrass enough for making me feel welcome in any opportunities I've had there. And I gotta thank Kyle for that, and then of course, for Travis and Christian as well, the team up there. Again, that just goes back to the relationship being so unique and special. So we're about to close up, but do any of you all have any closing remarks or statements that you'd like to leave us with?
I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is, again, I appreciate this opportunity like you do, because we like engaging with you all, and we learn something every time we do this. We really want to be a partner with Eastern Kentucky University Aviation, and this has been a great opportunity for us. And again, as much as you guys may want to learn and stop by the airport, I like coming down there too. And or if we ever have an opportunity again to meet with a group and have a hangar party, I think Johnny knows I like to cook hot dogs and stuff like that, and it's really important.
I know that too.
So, maybe
Frankl Fridays.
Exactly. But I'd love to have all the class up here and up to the Westlex side of the operation and have a little party and do stuff like that too. And it's fun for us as much as it is for you guys.
And I echo that, just ditto. Just we enjoy the engagement. So thanks for inviting us to spend a little bit of time with you, and we look forward to staying connected.
I got a feeling I'm going to regret that LinkedIn discussion, but bring it on.
Your number is going to increase after tonight, that's for sure. Linda, you definitely got to come to a Frankl Friday at some point.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I will. I'll make it out there, as long as you also guarantee that they'll have sweet tea.
It's adding a complication. So.
Yeah. I've talked to the guys out there before. You gotta offer some kind of refreshment, like outside of just hot dogs.
Fair enough. Erica, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Nope. Thanks again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying Erica. My bad.
Oh.
Yeah, I just really appreciate y'all being here, and I think the important takeaways that you guys talked about, being adaptive, having initiative, taking time to invest in yourself and your relationships. I think all of those are, at least for me, some of the biggest takeaways from the conversation that we had tonight. And I think we're neighbors. Are you guys off Main Street?
We are.
Yeah.
I guess you can recognize that.
Right. Yeah. The big square windows, 9-pane windows. Yeah. I'm in Park Plaza, just down the street.
Oh
yes.
Great.
Neighbors.
Yeah, so we are. But again, I really do just appreciate you guys coming tonight, answering our questions, having an open conversation about where aviation is and where it will return. As we all know, it will come back. So Thank you, you all.
All right, I'll reiterate the thank yous. Thank you guys so much again for coming tonight and being a part of this event. Erica, I want to say thank you to you and the Women Aviation team for collaborating with us in this event. And then finally, Kyle, I cannot thank you enough for getting this all together and putting this on YouTube. And then lastly, finally, I would also like to thank all the viewers for coming in and tuning in and watching this event. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. That's all we have here.
Thank you.